Hey everybody, and welcome back to the blog. Today we're going to be doing a video about that mutt right over there, right over my shoulder. You think he's wishing me harm? He is out. Let me tell you about this story. Again, so what the theme of all of these homicides have in common is the murder house at 24 Sanford Road, Fairlawn, New Jersey. Every one of these murderers lived at that house, visited that house. Mad Dog Sullivan, Robert Escher, the list goes on and on. And the murders all over the place. New York, New Jersey, they were killing people. They were killing people. And I was in the mix. You know, the most interesting thing about Kevin Marr is not so much as how I was able to infiltrate this criminal or get myself. That's not the story here that I see it. I see it as how one young guy could be in so many places where so many major crimes have happened over a 30-year period. And that's what Hollywood is interested in. And that's why I have an upcoming, I'll be signing a contract either Wednesday or Friday of next week. And we're going to be talking more about that. But that's what I really see the story in, and how I was able to navigate all of these crimes and without a scratch. Still here. He's 70 years old this month, still here. That's how I see my story being told. How many different, anyway, I digress. Today we're going to be talking about Ronald Scofield and how I met him and how I put him in jail for murder. Me alone. But I take that back. It was great detective work to get to me that got this guy convicted. Okay. So let's do a little backstory on him. I met him at a correctional facility called Bedford Hills in Bedford Hills, New York, up the Taconic Parkway. After I met this guy in Greenhaven, we became friends, but not like that. I didn't know who knew he was. I didn't know he was. Look, he had a beard. I didn't know he was gay. He didn't look gay. He looked like he could get any woman he wanted, and he could, and men too. I'm guessing. I don't know. This homie don't play that. Okay, so so I get out of jail first in Greenhaven, and I met my soon-to-be wife, Beth. While Beth was visiting him, as I'm walking out the door with New York City detectives in tow, I set my eyes on my soon-to-be wife for the very first time. Anyway, I digress. We're talking about this guy, Ronald Scofield. Good-looking guy, too. Look at him, good-looking guy. I mean, we're all good-looking guys. I mean, I was good-looking, too, if I do say so myself. Not bad for 70, huh? I'll be 70 years old. Woo. Woo. And I still got my real hair. It's not a wig. Anyway, I digress again. Where was I? So anyway, I get out. This guy introduces me to his wife, Alice Melise, who lives in 24 Sanford Road, Fairlawn, New Jersey. I learned this having these props. I like that. There's a sheriff down in Florida. I forget his name, but he does these, when he does a press conference, he's always got his, he's got his, what's his name? Oh, he's my age. He makes fun of the criminals. That's what I want to do. Copying him. Anyway, so I meet Alice. I already did the video on her, and before I'm trying to do this in somewhat chronological order. We're in 1976 now. We're 1976. Okay, so I meet Scofield in Tectonic in Beverly Hills, in Bedford Hills. What did I say it was? Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. It was a halfway house. It was a minimum security. The inmates could walk around. It was like a friggin' country club. It was really pretty cool. They have a woman's prison there to this day. To this day. And anyway, so when I met Alice, Alice used to go up to. She worked for American Express. And we used to. She used to come from New Jersey, go over to George Washington Bridge. I lived at Aqueduct Avenue in the Bronx. She used to pick me up, and we used to keep traveling up to visit Brian in there. She used to take 7-Up and ginger ale soda, crack them open, and fill them with vodka. So when we went up there, we were drinking vodka. The guards didn't know it. You were able to bring food and stuff in there. So we would have his vodka, and we go up there, and this guy became friends with this guy in prison. What they were doing, only God knows. And these two guys, like that's like the elevator scene. Anyway, so I meet this guy. So it was me, Alice, and Beth would go up and visit Brian every weekend until finally he got out on furlough and stuff like that. So I wound up meeting this guy. So what happens? I am just about to get off of parole. I'm still on parole. I'm just about to get off parole. I think I have months to go. I'm doing good. I'm trying to put this life behind me. As I met Beth, I was in love. I had my stepson. I loved him dearly. My little Pooh Bear, we used to call him. And I was happy. Minding my own business. I had a real job. I worked for Penn Central Railroad, which I had a great job. I worked for the track department. I busted my ass. I used to go out there with a pick and pull out old railroad ties and put them in. It was fucking. You had to be buff to do that shit. I was buff. Man, I came home with calluses on my hands. I wanted nothing to do with that life. I paid back Jim Doherty. I was just trying to get my life straight. My fiance Beth had a great job. She worked for, and this is funny. Oh, I should use this. She worked for New York Magazine, and who would know that years later, New York Magazine would feature a guy I punched in the face who was trying to murder my girlfriend, Mary Catherine Williams. Look, who would have? I just saw this thing there. Like, is that a coincidence or what? You be the judge. New York Magazine, 288 2nd Avenue. After I worked all day, I would jump in my car and pick up my fiance on 2nd Avenue at New York Magazine. And I had a normal life for the first time in my life. I'm 21 years old now, and I was just trying to, I didn't want to do anything illegal anymore. I pressed my luck long enough. And so anyway, I get a phone call from my parole officer. And he says, I want you to come in on Wednesday. I need to speak to you. There's a detective that wants to speak to you. What he said. So I wasn't supposed, that was much earlier. Like at this point I had to go in every month. When you first get out, it's every week, then it goes every 2 weeks. Now I'm every month. I only got a few more months to go. So now I'm like, I hang up the phone. I go, okay, hang up the phone. Now I'm shitting prick. What did I do? What is this about? And so I wind up going in to my parole office, to the parole office, which was on 161st Street and the Grand Concourse, right by the Bronx Supreme Court. And I go in there and I meet a guy by the name of Detective Louis D. Pasquale. Right here. It's right in this book, Cop Without a Badge, Chapter 7. Louis D. Pasquale. Was it Louis? I'm thinking Louis. From that, I'm sure somebody's gonna, I can't, okay, so yeah, Louis D. Pasquale. Italian guy, yeah, a really cool gentleman. Not one of these pushy detectives. I mean, let me say this too. The greatest detectives in the world are in New York City. New York City has the greatest detectives in the world. They don't forget. Once they're on you, they'll never forget. They don't forget. So I go in there and we sit down. He goes, I want to talk to you about a homicide. And I go, oh shit. I know I didn't kill anybody. I always had that. I always had that Lincoln in the back of my mind, Roy DeMeo's Lincoln. And I'm going to do I'm going to do an update on that. We're going back. We are going back. I spoke to Jeremy Nug over at his channel just the other day. So we're getting ready to go back. So, but I always had that Lincoln in the back of my mind because what I smelled, not what I saw, not what I knew, but what I smelled coming from that thing. So I always had that in the back of my mind. And now we're talking, this is 1976, and that only had happened 2 years before. So that was the only thing that was going through my mind. Am I getting popped for that? Did they find it? Oh shit, I didn't, you know. Some. He starts talking now. Okay, let me back up a little bit. This guy in Bedford Hills, New York. He lived in Bedford Hills, New York. He was from Bedford Hills, New York, and he wound up in Bedford Hills, a minimum security prison, and he met Brian, like I said. So he was from that area. Very important part. And so this is how thorough New York City detectives are. And this guy, although it was my testimony that put that prick in jail, how I set him up, it was but I wouldn't have gotten there without Detective Louis DePasquale from the 2nd Homicide Zone. He worked out of the 1-7 precinct on 51st Street and 2nd Avenue, I think it is, on the east side, the 2nd Homicide Zone in Manhattan, where this murder took place. Okay. What great police work. And I'm going to tell you how in this video, I'm going to tell you how all his work came to fruition to get me. And then how he spoke to me, just a really cool detective. And guess what? When my book came out, this one, he was invited. He lived in, I don't know if he's still alive, but he lived in fact, I'm going to look him up. In fact, he lived in Orange County. He retired in Orange County, New York. Just what a low-key, cool, the epitome of cool. Humble, cool, yet tough, no nonsense, and a very, very, very smart detective. I'm sure he must have left the police department, Detective 1, I'm sure, which is like lieutenant's pay, but then again, I had the so anyway, where was I? So anyway, every time I would visit every time I would visit this guy, I had to sign a sheet and show ID. So the New York State Department of Correctional Services had that information. So I am now connected to this guy. So this is what happened. He gets out on furlough. He picks up a prostitute in the 42nd Street area. They go into the room. And let's just say he had a hard time rising to the moment. And the clock was ticking. And then it was time for her to go. He didn't like that. To make a long story short, he beat her to death. Beat her with a telephone, back in the old days for all you young people. We used to have these boxy telephones like in hotel. Beat her with that, beat her with a lamp, and he killed her. Now that she was a 24-year-old girl from Maryland, her father was a Maryland state trooper. And I think, they took a real, they worked, I don't know. I'm not saying that they put more effort into this because of who her father was, but I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did. Um, so he killed her. To rent a hotel room back then, you did not need ID. So when Numbnuts signs in to go up to the room, of course, he puts a phony name, he puts a phony address. And so that I don't know why he did it, but he did it. He put a phony name, phony address, and he left. So now we're talking about Midtown Manhattan. So if you're going to think of a phony address, where are you going to get a phony? I mean, he put a real street number down and his town, Bedford Hills. This asshole. This is what's going to be. Look, this is what's going to lead to him having served 16 years in prison. Okay, so he puts down. So what this idiot does for all you people up there in Bedford Hills, he puts down a phony name and he puts down 98 Babbitt Road, Bedford Hills, New York, and he puts the zip code down. And the zip code is for real. That street is for real. 98 isn't. It's a vacant, well, whatever it was, that part was phony. So Detective DePasquale, he gets that information and he's going up to New York. And he's canvassing the area, asking all kinds of questions, I guess. So now he knows that his suspect is from that area, for sure. So what does he do? He looks up everyone who's been recently paroled. There's also a prison there, too. Anyone that has been recently paroled from that prison, or anyone recently paroled from the Bedford Hills, New York. It's up in Westchester County. And the one and only one that comes up is this guy. And this guy's still in prison, but he was furloughed. He was on a work release thing, trying to get a job in Midtown Manhattan. That's what he was doing there. So now he gets his name. He gets this mugshot. So this is where I got the mugshot from him. We asked him for it. He gave it to us. And like I said before, what a gentleman, what a soft-spoken, he just so didn't look like or sound like a cop. He was very, very charming guy. I don't know where I got that word, charming, but yeah, he was low-key. So, anyway, that's that. So now they think it's him. There was no fingerprints at the crime scene. There was no DNA, of course. There's no DNA back then. So now he goes to the prison and he looks up all the visitors. And of course, that's all comes up right away that these two were buddies in prison. Because in prison, they keep a record of that, who you hung out with, did you have any, they keep a pretty detailed record, even back then. So now he runs me. And of course, I am a registered, let me tell you, when you become a confidential informant, you are registered with the New York City Police Department. If a detective opens a case on you and you put your name in it and you're a CI, boom, CI 175 of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. When he put my name in, that's what popped up. Oh, shit. So then, of course, who does he call? Who does he call? Let me see. I want to. I'm trying to copy. I'm trying to copy. I'm trying to copy that sheriff. What the fuck? I got all these. Anyway, I can't find the picture I want, so I'll use it. Who does he call? He calls this guy right here, Detective Jim Doherty of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Hey, what? Hey, you fucking. Now they don't know it was me. They did get a description. Oh, I forgot to tell you. The guy at the desk of the hotel gave a description. And if you look back then, let me see, oh, right here. Now, this picture of me was taken in 1974, and this picture of him was taken in 1984, 86, right? He had blonde hair, same physical description, both of us, same physical description. So when he pulled my yellow sheet up, Detective Louis DePasquale, he's thinking, oh, I'm familiar with Bedford Hills because I've been going up there to see this asshole, right? I never visited Ron because I didn't have to. His parents lived like 10 blocks from the prison, and they used to come up every single weekend. Now in Bedford Hills back then, if the weather was right, you could go to. We always had picnics outside. There was a grill, like you could have a little picnic and be with your family. It was like a country club. Who could give a shit about doing time up there? So I got to know him and his family up there. So now I get to the my parole office, and there's Detective Louis D. Pasquale. By this time, he had called Jimmy, and Jimmy told him that he talked me up, that this guy's great. He's no fucking murderer. Your guy is Ronald Scofield. That's who your guy is. But he was still open them. So I'm waiting in the waiting room of the parole. You know, you got to wait in a waiting room. There's a receptionist, and then when your PO calls you, you go into his office. That's how it was. I went into his office, and there he was, a very assuming detective. I sit down, and I'm going to make a long story short out of this. He tells me, I want to ask you about, I'm here, I'm a homicide detective, and I'm working a homicide out of Manhattan, where a 24-year-old prostitute got murdered. And he pulls this out. This is what I have left. He pulls this out. He says, do you know this guy? I went, yeah, I sure do. I sure do. Then he asked me, where was I at the date that the time happened? And I lived in the Bronx. I worked all that day. I worked for the railroad. I was on the Hell's Gate Bridge. I could prove I was on the Hell's Gate Bridge putting railroad ties in when this happened. So I had 9 guys with me, punched in. I was on the Hell's Gate Bridge, overlooking the 59th Street, overlooking the Triborough Bridge. Anyway, so he starts to get off at me, and he's targeting him. He's targeting him, and he tells me, and this was really cool about what he did. Now, I said, yeah, that was a friend of mine. And he said, listen, maybe I shouldn't, just tell me, if this is your friend, I don't expect you to help us. You just tell me he's your friend and you don't want to give information. That's fine. I don't believe he did anything wrong. Your parole officer said you were doing good. You got a girlfriend now. I don't want, just the way he said all of that, like just triggered me like, okay. And then he told me a little bit about the girl, and then he showed me her picture, her college or high school picture. Beautiful girl. Got hooked on drugs, and that took her to the stroll on 42nd Street. 24 years old. Beautiful girl. And So after he said that, I I said, how can I help you? And he says, you know what? Is it okay if I stop by your house and we could talk more about this? Would that be okay with your wife and everything? I said, yeah, because I was nervous. I didn't want to say anything in front of my parole officer. I mean, I only had like 3 or 4 months to go left on my bid. So, but I was like, I was like, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to myself up at this point of my life. I'm almost off parole. I got a beautiful wife. I have a 5-year-old stepson. I just want to try to put this behind me. But when he showed me I don't have a picture of the girl. When he showed me the photo of the girl, beautiful girl, wholesome ivory girl, she looked like just a beautiful girl, and he fucking murdered her. What the fuck? How do as many murders as I've been involved with, fuck do you do that? The best way to fight a woman, the best way for all you guys out there, my experience, married 3 times, I'm 70 years old. The best way to fight them, they can't, you shut up, turn around and walk away. Ooh! When they yapping, you just walk away. Walk away. Anyway, so, boom, he comes to my house the next day. He's in my living room at 1634 Mayflower Avenue in the Bronx next section of the Bronx. That's where I live. I invite him in. We sit down, and he tells me, now he's telling me, by this time, he spoke to Jim Doherty again, and they just had the coolest thing to say. And he said, and that's the first, well, I had a long talk with Jim Doherty about you. And he said, you're the one of a kind guy, and that you've been a friend to the New York City Police Department, and you've done things. So anyway, so um, he lays out what happened to me. And we now know it's not you. And we now know it's him. Can you help us? Can you go undercover with a wire and get him to talk about what happened? And I go, yes, yes, I can. So what the pretext was, I had his phone number right in my wallet. I had his phone number. I said, you know what? Let me call him right now. Call this guy right fucking now. Got him on the phone. And I said, hey, well, listen, I had homicide detectives. No, I didn't do that. No, I didn't. I tried to call him and I didn't get nowhere with him. So now, um, what we did now is once I agreed. So I go to him. Hey, listen, I know New York City's got money. I mean, if I'm gonna have to go up there and spend money at that, she says no problem. $500. I got $500. That was a lot of money in 1976. 500. It was probably a couple grand now. So I did get paid $500 for this job. And that's what it was, a fucking job. That's what I do. I'm an informant. That's my job. That's what I do. That's what I do. Fucking help society and our world and make it a better, safer place. That's what I do. That's what I did back then. I was a paid confidential informant. So, um, so the pretext was, I call him up and I tell him, I just had a parole. I just had a New York City detective homicide at the fucking. What did you do? What? Let me tell you something. So I go up. I don't know if it was on. Oh, I go. Listen, I need to speak to you. I'm going to drive up. I lived in the Bronx. It wasn't that far up to Bedford Hills. So I'm going to come up. So I come up, and I'm in my car. I get him in my car, and I start telling him that I said, "What happened?" And he told me. He told me. I pick up this hooker, and she kept telling me my time's up. And she just broke, and I snapped, and I killed her. So now, what I got to do as an informant to make this case airtight. Now I've got a wire on. I'm in my car in Bedford Hills. I got a wire on, and so And he just admitted to me that he murdered the girl. Now, I'm trained by the New York City Police Department and the FBI. Now, my mind automatically goes to evidence. I'm thinking as a defense attorney, how can a defense attorney? So now, Frank told me, you know what you got to do? You got to get him. This is all the things that I had to do so that he would get Colin. I had to, once he admitted it, I had to have him describe the room to a T. Describe the way he left the body to a T. What color the walls were. Did the door open in? Did the door open out to the left? I had to get all of these things. And when you start asking people who just committed murder all these questions that are, only an idiot would answer these questions. I would say, what the fuck do you want to know what color the fucking wall? And so, so I don't forget what I said. It's in the book, chapter 7. You got to read it. Because, when I told this story in 93, it was like 20 years old. Now I'm telling the story, it's 50 years old. So anyway, so I kept asking him, okay, so let me get a picture in my mind how fucking much trouble, because I told him they think it's me, or they think it's you, or they think it's both of us. The desk guy gave a friggin' description, and we are the same description. We are the same hair color, eye color, everything is the same. So now you better fucking tell me that's the way I flipped it on him. Why I wanted to know everything about that fucking crime scene so I can imagine in my head, do they have a case or not? Do they have a case or not? And so he totally took it, hook, line, and sinker. Now, I don't think I had a Niagara on me in my pants. And back then, they were like this big, not that big. And I got it in my bag. And as time goes on, that fucking thing gets hot and it's right down. So, oh no, was it why? I forget now. Maybe I did have a Cal. And a Cal is a transmitter. I think I did. I had both because this was a homicide. I had both, and they heat up. So he starts telling me everything. How was her body? I left her on the floor by the bed. I mean, did you leave her face up, face down? No, she was on her side. What was she wearing? I mean, you could paint a picture in your mind how detailed. I put all those details out. What he did. Then I asked him how long it took to kill her. Was she screaming? He was choking her. He was fucking banging her with the phone. He was fucking. So now I got every single thing I need in my mind. In my mind, he's going to be found guilty. He's never going to take this to trial. He's going to be found guilty because the things that he said, the totality of the evidence now is that there's no way he could go to trial and win. No way. The information he gave me about the crime scene could only be the murderer. How he killed her, jumped from the bed, I mean, he was done. So, I guess I could do like one video with this. Okay, yeah, let's just do we're gonna just, I don't know, let me figure out. So yeah, but then we'll get to the trial. Okay, so now, I got him on tape. I went to a restaurant, I think. Anyway, I go to the restaurant and now I got to take a pee. And should I say? No, I'm going to save that for the grand jury. So now, bang, he gets arrested. And now we're going to talk about the trial in the next one. What happened? What happened to me in the men's room with my Niagara as I unzipped my zipper and the things I said, not realizing the recorder was still recording. I'm going to see you guys on the next one.